Hi and welcome. Happy Thursday. Hope you're having a wonderful week. I am excited to be here with you today with our topic that um, obviously it's going to be valuable for a lot of you, specifically given that we are receiving round two deadlines as we speak for a lot of different schools. So, one round two decisions, sorry, for a lot of different schools. And one of those options in the decisions is being waitlisted. So let's get right into it. One of the things that I want to always remind everyone that goes through this process is to remember that being on the wait list isn't a failure. It means that you're close enough that the school doesn't want to let you go just yet, but they're waiting to see who you are after adversity and what you do when no one's handing you a win. That's what we're going to unpack today: the truth about this holding pattern and how to turn it into an offer of admission. So, um, being on the waitlist isn't a coincidence. It's something that you must remember. I know it's definitely not something you are excited about. No one's excited to be in the holding pattern, but it's really important to check your mindset, right, at this point. So, being on the waitlist means you checked a lot of boxes, but maybe didn't connect the dots as clearly as someone else did. Um, that the schools, essentially, when they look at the holistic profile, someone else may have been slightly more competitive than you. You could have also been in obviously a tight pool, and they want to see how the class shapes up overall, who says yes and who says no to their offers of admission. Um, what's important to remember, however, is that you are not out, meaning you are not out of the game. You're still in the game very much and playing a part. And there's still a room for you to shift the outcomes around. Most of the schools don't have a waitlist plan or a waitlist sort of numeric value of where you're falling in. So if you're waitlisted, you definitely have an opportunity to get off the waitlist. And this depending on what are the things that you do. Um, Now, you are in a phase of um, two components of the application game. And the outcome and the admission team is looking to see, um, is this person still growing, and are they still hungry for this? Are you, right, being on the wait list, are you still hungry to be a part of this community? And that's where you are in control in terms of showing them that you are still hungry, you are still interested in being a part of that particular community. So we work with applicants that are placed on the wait list, um, because that is part of the process, right? Some are lucky to be admitted to their dream school first time, and others have to go through the waitlist process. And it, you just have to recognize that there's still a game that you have to play. Our coaching process entails very tailored coaching in terms of personalized strategies, even on the waitlist category. We work very closely with candidates that we're working through our entire process, or people who sign up with us when they're put on a waitlist, to really help them, navigate that process. We look at the entire holistic profile of a given candidate. So if you are someone who is looking to um, get an understanding of where you stand, given that most schools don't necessarily tell you what was the reason you were placed on the wait list. This is a great opportunity for you to work with someone, if you haven't worked with someone before, to evaluate your profile and see what are the strategy, essentially, on what are the things that you can do to make sure that you are maximizing the outcome. Obviously, if you are on the wait list and you are really interested in getting off that school's waitlist, meaning you don't have a competing offer where you're more excited about the other school than the one that placed you on the waitlist, then it makes sense for you to connect with a coach and see how they can help you um, navigate that process. And we are one of those coaches that do offer those kind of services. And definitely feel free to reach out for a consultation to see if we can support you and see what would be the next steps in terms of process that we can guide you through. So, continuing on the waitlist process, there are some mistakes that applicants make that I want to make sure that you are mindful of and that you are not repeating as much as possible, so that you are being cool and collected, essentially. So there's some elements that applicants, some big mistakes that applicants make, and I totally recognize the fact that you're anxious, you want to get off the waitlist, you really want to attend that school, and you're going to do whatever you can. So for most people, right? So, but one of the things that actually a mistake is that there's a radio silence. Um, and this mistake is made by the most competent applicants as well. So it doesn't matter who you are. These are some mistakes that applicants make that you want to really make sure that to avoid. So the first one is being silent. These kinds of applicants are waiting for the decision to come out and really do nothing in the process. They just accept the waitlist offer and, you know, don't show any continuous interest. The second is the candidate who panics and they send updates every other week or continuously and really frantically. This is not really helpful because it doesn't show you as someone who is, again, cool and collected under pressure. You have to be purposeful. You need to recognize that the admission team is there to support, to evaluate you from the perspective of, the class. But they don't want someone who's going to panic with every adverse experiences that they have. That just creates a lot of anxiety for everyone else. And the third kind of person is they the individuals who treat this process like a formality instead of an opportunity. So they send a very generic letter that says, well, here are the things that I've done, and don't think deeply about why this is important. How is this going to impact the cohort and the community that you are a part of or that you want to be a part of? So this is a huge mistake because it's essentially an effort without really putting any effort. And it doesn't communicate to someone who really wants to be a part of the community. And then the final mistake, or one of the final biggest mistakes, is that the applicants assume the application is frozen in time, when in fact it's actually a living thing. And what do I mean by frozen in time? I mean that they assume that you have done all the work that you need to do by the time you completed your application. There's nothing that happened. There's nothing that you're going to be doing after your submission, which it indicates to the admission team that you are someone who is only presenting your best self, only trying when there's an evaluation, and not trying for your own greater good, for your own growth, personal growth. And that is the kind of candidate that schools are not really interested in, particularly when it comes to top ranked M7 business schools. So, as I mentioned, these things, these mistakes really hurt your presentation of yourself. The admission team is really watching the applicants on the wait list for growth, the tone that they take in the process of being on this holding pattern, and the judgment that they make in terms of the actions that they take. Your chance at the moment is to pivot, to showcase that you are someone who is willing to take action and that you are strategic in where you take action for optimal outcomes, for greater outcomes. And just remember that if you are only on the waitlist and you choose to reapply, all of this effort that you're putting in now, it's going to help you strengthen your candidacy for next application that you submit. Obviously, it's also going to help you grow as a professional in the experiences that you gain as a result of, doing this work. So it's not wasted, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at. Okay, so how are you going to strengthen your profile while you're on the waitlist? Let's talk about the actions that actually change outcomes. I always guide my clients to show meaningful progress. This might be um, taking on leadership project or leadership role. It means that you can have a conversation with your with your boss about what activities or what things you can take on, even if you're not given a new title. It's really about leadership, collaboration, demonstrating particularly areas of weakness in your profile, demonstrating that you have the capability to strengthen it. Some of you may need a new GMAT or GRE, so you may want to plan for that. Or perhaps if you have exhausted all of your retakes, you can think about taking a class like Math for Management, offered by Berkeley Haas Extension School or Berkeley's Extension School, or Harvard Business School's core. Those are some of the things that you can demonstrate academic readiness, particularly if you had a average GMAT and low GPA. These are ways that you can demonstrate that you are going to be a strong candidate, or you are a strong candidate that is going to succeed in the program. More than what you do is to remember that every story is meaningful when it's framed correctly, right? So you need to think about how you're framing your growth. Don't just say you did something, say why you did it, what you learned from it, and how it ties to your MBA goals, to the MBA community, your contributions to that cohort. It needs to be purposeful. Business schools at top ranked universities or top ranked business schools are really looking for that thoughtful leader who is taking on who is taking actions that are moving the needle in the direction of where they're looking to go. It's not just about enrolling in anything, right? It's really about being strategic and being purposeful. And really, this, at the end of the day, framing your story, showcasing that you are a thoughtful leader, is your secret sauce, which is what makes the update much more meaningful and much more impactful for the schools when they reevaluate your candidacy later down the line. Now, timing is critical. The actions that you need to take is, within about 3 weeks or so from the time that you have received your notification, particularly for the schools that you really want to attend. You want to send a thoughtfully crafted waitlist letter. Now, there's a caveat, obviously, to the schools that don't want you to send anything. So you have to follow the rules of the schools that you have applied to, and make sure that you take action there. From there, unless something significantly changes, which you should be taking actions to make changes. Don't just send the letter without any changes, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at. You do want to make sure you're taking action. Therefore, you can, once a month or so, you can send a letter while you're on the wait list to continue demonstrating your interest. But if you haven't made any changes, if you haven't taken any action, then don't send the letter just to send the letter, right? When you do send a letter, your message really has to be clear. First, you have to say that you still want to attend, right, this institution. That is your number one choice. Second, you want to communicate what you have done, the actions that you have taken, why they're meaningful, why did you do them, why they're meaningful, right? And then the third, obviously, it's how is the actions that you have taken going to impact the community at said business school, the one that you are targeting. Obviously, always you're going to close with confidence, with respectful enthusiasm for the school, and no, language around desperation. It doesn't really look good for a essentially a potential Fortune 500 leader, um, that you are considered as when you are applying to these top ranked institutions. So, um, another thing that you have to think about as you're going through this evaluation process is what you can do during this period. So, if um, you are only on the waitlist, which means you don't have any offers of admission, other than the waitlist, then you really have to evaluate, this this waiting game. Waitlist can go on until June or July sometimes. If you're an international applicant, you really have to take into account the visa complications that you will have to deal with. So you have to have a cap in terms of when is the last moment that you need to make a decision from here. If you are on the wait list, you may want to either consider round three, if that's something that aligns. If you feel really confident around your capability to demonstrate greater success in round three, then absolutely do that. But if you are not, then you also want to take into account what you should be doing now to make sure that if you're reapplying in round one, that you're taking action and giving yourself a cap time as to when you're gonna, how long you're gonna wait for the wait list, and then start taking actions for a round one reapplication. Sometimes I will say though that if you're put on a wait list for everything, or you only have wait lists or rejections, um, applying to round three may be a little bit challenging because there was a reason why you were put on the wait list, which means you're not at the caliber of the candidates that came before you. And applying in round three may not change the circumstances either. So we really be strategic in terms of what your options are there, and we'll be definitely happy to talk with you about what can that look like and how we can support you either on the wait list or in round one for the coming application cycle in 2025-2026 cycle itself. So with that, I'm going to move to questions. We have about 12 minutes to go through this. Happy to answer any questions you guys have. We have received questions in the registration form. This has been a popular topic, and I'm sure given the decisions are coming out, as we speak and continuing on to next week, I'm sure there's going to be an important conversation. But happy to answer questions that you have, where you are in the process. If you've been waitlisted, where have you been waitlisted? And I can give you some commentary and some feedback on that, in terms of what steps you should be taking. We've been in this business for a while, and we see the patterns of business schools. So we may be able to give you some guidance there. So let's move to questions that have came through the registration. So is it okay to reach out to the admission committee to express continued interest? How often is too often? Yes, it's definitely the continued interest. It's not necessarily a reaching out. It is a letter that you write. Either you submit it through the form. In the portal you'll have a waitlist or update submission, or you will send an email to the admission team. Instructions are going to be given to you, so make sure that you read the fine print of the waitlist. So definitely do those components. The other thing, most of the schools do have a waitlist event for each round, for applicants that have been waitlisted, that give you more guidance. It's hugely important to attend, and see what macro level guidance that they're giving you all. Now you have to remember that the guidance that they're giving is a macro level, not necessarily pertinent to everyone in the room. So keep that in mind as you are evaluating your own candidacy. In terms of how often you send this, I mentioned earlier, in the first 3 weeks, you want to just gather the intel. Once you're waitlisted, you want to gather the intel, what updates have happened since you submitted your application, and then obviously build a strategy on what you should be doing, and then start writing the letter with purpose. So you should start writing the letter as soon as possible, given that it takes a few iterations to get it to where it needs to be with the purposefulness in mind. And then obviously send it, within 3 weeks of the wait list. From there, I would say, again, you have to build a strategy around, continuing to develop your profile. And so long as that there are updates to share, you can that are significant, you can share those within like about every month or so, essentially. Excellent. Will retaking the GMAT or the GRE while on the waitlist help, or does it look desperate? Definitely doesn't look desperate. You can definitely retake the test. I will say that just be mindful that this is going to take some time, so you will probably won't be able to sit for a new test and significantly improve your test result within a 3 week period of time. So you're going to have, plans in terms of what you submit when for the school, but definitely does not look desperate. You can absolutely retake the GMAT or the GRE and improve the score, but only if it makes sense. So if you already have a really strong score, like that's not going to be the deal breaker. They already have a score that's really strong. So then focus on the rest of your profile to showcase that you are ready for the next phase. So can I submit a letter of support or recommendation from someone new? If the school accepts a new letter recommendation, then absolutely. But this should be strategic again. It's not to just, oh, here's another letter of someone who wants to support me, is saying the exact same thing my other recommenders have said. This has to be net new information that the admission team hasn't seen before. But if they accept it, for sure, go ahead um, and write that, or request a letter of recommendation. The other thing that I wanted to mention to everyone, we are having a workshop on Saturday for those who are considering round one. So if you want to join that, there are 2 seats left. So it's limited. This is not going to we will not have a replay. It's not going to be available on YouTube. So if you want to join, get some strategic guidance on how do you put together a strong application, definitely feel free to join. Once the seats are left, we will are filled. We will have a wait list, but I highly doubt that we'll have anyone join from the wait list. But definitely, sign up for the session. All right, let's continue. Yeah, what is etiquette if I'm waitlisted at one school but accepted to another that's lower ranked? Excellent question. This is something that's going to be important for you specifically in terms of what what's important to you. Um, Obviously, you have to recognize that the waitlist is not guaranteed. So if you say no to the school that already gave you an offer, you are taking a risk. How huge of a risk is totally dependent on you and your goals. So I would say I've seen applicants. I had an applicant actually who uh, was accepted to UCLA and waitlisted at Columbia, and he accepted UCLA because that's the offer he had in hand. And then when Columbia got him off or when he got off the waitlist from Columbia, he then had to reject UCLA and accepted Columbia Business School. So that may be something you have to do if you are in that situation, given that obviously um, this is not a short term game in terms of you will do an MBA once and you want to get the best out of this process. So that would be something you'll have to take into account. Recognizing, of course, that your deposit that you have made will be lost. It's not refundable. Um, in the grand scheme of things, it's not always a big deal, but definitely something that you may want to take into account. And they also decide, is this something that you want to accept, or do you want to apply in the next application cycle and try again for other higher ranked schools? All right. And guys, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat feature of any of the platforms you're joining. I will, for those that are coming in through live, obviously the platform does show the name of the person asking the question. So I'll just read the question and won't have your name show up on the screen, given that this will be available as a replay on YouTube. Okay, let's go with the next question. And then I'll answer one more after this, and then we can call it a day. So what if I haven't had any major changes since submitting my application? How do I stay competitive? At this point, then you definitely want to have a conversation with a coach and see what are some things that you can do to have to make the change. If you haven't had any significant changes up till now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything in the future. So, what are some changes that you can implement in the next month or so that can help move the needle? And the other component that you have to keep in mind is, if you are reapplying to the school in round one, you will have to respond to an essay that says what are the changes that happened since you last applied. Most of the schools have a reapplicant essay, and all of these actions will need to uh, all these actions will be stuff that you will be using in your reapplicant essay for the schools that you choose to reapply to. All right, last question. How do I decide what kind of update is meaningful enough to send? Promotion, new test scores, recent project? Yes to all of those. All of those are significant. It's not only one, however. So keep that in mind. It's not, I'm going to send an update letter and only tell them I have a new score. No, you're going to look at new scores, a promotion, new project, new extracurricular activity, any component that you have worked on that can significantly strengthen your application is valuable. That said, what's important to remember is that you shouldn't be really highlighting things you already very clear in your application that have that you have those skills. So if you are really good at collaborating with people and your entire application has communicated that effectively, then it doesn't make sense for you to write another how strong of a collaborator you are in a update letter, because that's already communicated. They obviously have received that in different forms beforehand. So at this point, what's important for you is to look at where are the gaps. What are the things that you haven't communicated effectively in your application that need a little bit of more development that you can communicate in your update letter through examples, essentially through different experiences that you've had, or retakes of tests. So if you are someone who is not coming from a quant focused job, and your test is okay, a retake can definitely help to demonstrate that you can be exceptional if you're put in the right opportunity to use data to make data backed decisions, right? So that's elements that you can definitely you have to be thinking about as you're putting together an update letter. It's not just here's some new information, or here's some information that has happened, or here's some data that has happened since I last applied. It's really about how is this information going to support the rest of your application itself. Wonderful, guys. Thank you so much for being here. If you need support, you know where to go. Go to our Sia Admissions website, or scan the code, the QR code on the screen, and request a consultation. Next week, we're going to shift to round one applicants. So we're going to talk about goals, and that's your why before you start your application and go through the process. So if you are considering reapplying or going through that process in the round one um, cycle, definitely join us next week at 10 a.m. When you register, definitely write your question down so that we can have it on our queue so I can answer them during the live session. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week. We also have another event on right after our session, so there's a lot of me online next week. So I look forward to seeing in whichever platform you decide to join. Good luck with all your applications, and I'll see you next week.